Why Canada should join the EU. At the time, the peace was widely ridiculed and touted as proof of the economist's declining quality and credibility. However, a couple of months on, the article no longer looks quite so ridiculous. In fact, it appears almost prescient. Today, as the world's political and economic landscapes continue to shift dramatically, this once dismissed idea is gaining traction, urging us to rethink long-standing alliances and the future of global cooperation. This documentary takes you on a journey through evolving international relations, exploring how Canada, long seen as an ally of the United States, might find renewed purpose and security in forging a closer partnership with Europe. With rising tensions in North America and shifting global power balances, the possibility of Canada joining the European Union is no longer merely theoretical, but a strategic proposal rooted in both economic and political necessity. Recent events have added layers of complexity to Canada's foreign policy, with Trump's administration ramping up threats of tariffs and even talk of annexation. America's northern neighbor finds itself at a crossroads. Escalating trade disputes have left Canada reeling and searching for alternative alliances. A poll conducted by Abacus Data in late February revealed that an astonishing 44% of Canadians now believe that Canada should join the EU, compared to just 34% who oppose the idea. This shift in public opinion highlights a growing desire to explore new economic and political frontiers beyond the familiar, but increasingly unpredictable partnership with the United States. Even before these tensions, Canada and the EU maintained a warm relationship. Canada's free trade agreement with the EU, its observer status in the Council of Europe, and its role as a founding member of NATO have long provided a robust framework for cooperation. Such long-standing ties now offer a promising basis for deeper integration. Adding to the momentum, Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, widely seen as a visionary leader, recently embarked on his first foreign trip to France. During his visit, Carney described Canada as the most European of non-European countries. This statement, bold yet reflective of Canada's cultural and political affinities, has sparked discussions across political and economic circles. It underscores an emerging consensus. In the face of rising American protectionism and economic coercion, Canada might well consider looking to Europe for stability, security, and economic diversification. The idea of Canada joining the European Union might sound far-fetched at first glance, but the global context has changed significantly. With Donald Trump's administration imposing trade barriers and adopting an increasingly protectionist stance, Canada finds itself forced to explore alternatives. The current landscape is defined by rapid shifts in international trade and security policies. Canada's exploration of the EU as a potential partner represents more than a mere change of economic direction. It is a strategic realignment aimed at reducing its dependence on its traditional ally to the south. While full EU membership presents undeniable legal and geographical hurdles, given that Article 49 of the Treaty on European Union states that only European nations are eligible. The growing synergy between Canada and European nations suggests that a form of deeper partnership is not entirely out of reach. This evolving relationship could take many forms, from enhanced trade agreements to political and defense cooperation, ultimately reshaping global alliances in ways that many observers did not anticipate. Before we dive deeper into the details, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Evoke for in-depth analysis on global events. The stakes are high when it comes to revising long-standing alliances. In recent statements, U.S. officials have not shied away from issuing veiled threats and discussing retaliatory measures. "I deal with every country indirectly or directly," one official declared, emphasizing that, in some respects, Canada is even tougher to negotiate with than many of America's larger adversaries. The rhetoric is sharp. "I'd rather have them made in Michigan. I'd rather have them made in South Carolina, or any one of our." Such remarks underline the complex web of economic interdependencies and political rivalries. The U.S. has already imposed tariffs to counter what it views as unfair trade practices, tallying billions in economic adjustments. In response, Canada is compelled to seek alliances that safeguard its economic interests while preserving its national dignity and sovereignty. Even as tit-for-tat tariffs and counter-tariffs make headlines, Canada continues to weigh the long-term benefits of diversifying its international partnerships. In the midst of these economic skirmishes, There is a promise from the U.S. that workers will be supported in the face of these challenges. We've already imposed $60 billion worth of tariffs, an official noted, while hinting at an additional $100 billion in potential tariffs, underscoring the massive scale of the ongoing trade war. Such high-stakes negotiations leave little room for complacency. Canada's willingness to explore a more robust relationship with the EU is partly driven by the need to secure a reliable economic foundation in an era of unprecedented uncertainty. Moreover, behind closed doors and in diplomatic briefings, American negotiators have been actively consulting with various stakeholders. From conversations with Secretary of State Rubio to phone calls with key senators like Lindsey Graham, it is clear that the U.S. is leaving no stone unturned as it navigates this complex geopolitical landscape. Historically, Canada and the European Union have maintained strong trade and diplomatic relations. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, has already granted Canada preferential access to European markets by reducing tariffs and streamlining trade processes. Yet, as the U.S. embarks on an unpredictable economic path, Ottawa is actively considering how to cement these ties further. The possibility of extending beyond trade to include political and defense integration is increasingly on the table. At its core, Canada's bond with Europe is anchored in shared values. From a cultural and political perspective, both regions uphold democratic principles, universal healthcare, and bilingualism. These commonalities provide a solid foundation for deeper collaboration, setting the stage for a more integrated future that could transform global alliances and redefine economic security. Despite the growing synergy, Canada's path to joining the EU is riddled with significant challenges. Article 49 of the Treaty on European Union clearly dictates that membership is reserved for European nations, and Canada's geographical location presents logistical difficulties that have never been encountered before in any EU accession process. Yet, the dialogue is evolving. While full membership may remain a distant dream, the idea of a strengthened Canada-EU alliance continues to gain momentum, with both parties exploring creative mechanisms for cooperation that might bypass traditional legal frameworks. The conversation extends beyond economics into the realm of defense. As Canada reassesses its military ties, especially given recent discussions about its 88 F-35 fighter jets, the nation is questioning its reliance on U.S.-made technology and the inherent vulnerabilities of depending on a single supplier for critical defense systems. Concerns have emerged over whether a U.S. president, who has repeatedly threatened economic coercion and territorial loss, would guarantee reliable access to the advanced software integral to these jets. These questions underscore the strategic urgency behind exploring alliances that could offer more secure and diversified defense cooperation. The controversy surrounding the F-35 jets has become a symbol of a larger strategic dilemma. With Ottawa having already paid for the first batch of jets, any delay in delivery or reliability issues could leave Canada's Air Force significantly weakened. The country's aging fleet of CF-18 fighter jets is nearing the end of its service life, further amplifying the need for a dependable and modern defense infrastructure. Should Canada decide to move closer to Europe in terms of defense, it would not only need to meet Europe's expectations, but also demonstrate that it can effectively contribute to the collective security of European nations. Economic incentives provide additional motivation for Canada to deepen its relationship with the EU. As the world's second-largest economy, the European Union offers Canadian businesses a vast and diversified market. In an era where U.S. tariffs increasingly disadvantage Canadian exports, a pivot towards Europe represents a strategic move aimed at ensuring long-term economic stability. The potential for reduced trade barriers, enhanced market access, and stronger economic cooperation with Europe makes the prospect of a Canada-EU alliance particularly appealing. That in addition to economic benefits, defense cooperation emerges as another critical element of this proposed realignment. With NATO facing internal strains and shifting priorities, Canada's military collaboration with European nations could provide an essential security cushion in an increasingly volatile global landscape. This partnership could help ensure that Canada's defense capabilities are not solely tethered to U.S. interests, thus providing a more balanced and diversified approach to national security. Even as debates rage over the appropriate tariff responses, Canadian leaders are demonstrating a resolve to stand up for national interests. We can stand up for ourselves. We are Canada strong, declared one prominent voice, emphasizing that there are limits to the extent to which the country can match every U.S. tariff dollar for dollar. This rhetoric not only reflects economic realism, but also a broader desire for autonomy in shaping Canada's international relationships. Such sentiments resonate deeply with a public increasingly wary of overdependence on a single global power. Recent polls continue to reveal a divided public on the future direction of Canada's alliances. While 44% of Canadians favor forging closer ties with Europe, a significant minority remains hesitant about the potential risks of distancing from the United States. This division highlights the complexity of Canada's relationship with both global superpowers, encapsulating a broader debate about national identity, security, and economic survival in an ever-changing geopolitical environment. Looking ahead, any substantial move toward a Canada-EU alliance would necessitate comprehensive legal restructuring. Canadian laws would need to align with European standards in areas such as trade regulations, environmental policies, and consumer protections. Though full EU membership may seem unlikely given the legal and geographical constraints, a deepened alliance that embraces economic, technological, and defense cooperation could redefine global trade and diplomacy. Ottawa is already increasing its cooperation with countries like France, Germany, and the UK, particularly in fields such as technological innovation and climate policy. This proactive engagement is paving the way for a future in which Canada could assume a more prominent role on the European stage. As we conclude, one cannot help but wonder, is Canada's pivot toward Europe a necessary step for securing its economic future? Or is it merely an overreaction to temporary political shifts? The answer remains complex, but one fact is clear: Canada is at a crossroads. The choices it makes in the coming years will not only define its own future, but could also reshape the global balance of power. We invite you to share your thoughts and join the conversation in the comments below.